In the deep forest, Lloyd was hiding to hunt a certain creature that attacked him instead. Suddenly, his elder brother Shuma arrived with the creature he had failed to hunt, calling his name. He was happy to see him, and then they returned home together. Gramps was waiting for them. He wanted to explore and asked his big brother if it was fun out there. Shuma claimed he would work hard to make his wish come true. Lloyd travels to look for Marie, the Witch of the West. Since ancient times, witches have granted wishes, but at a price, she tells him. She asks him to leave at once unless he is prepared to make a similar sacrifice, and if he is ready. She is curious as to what he desires to make such a sacrifice. That's when he reveals that he has come from the countryside to become a soldier while living with her. This makes her furious, and she asks him to find an inn and check out the bulletin board in the town square. Her pride is defeated when he shows her a magic ball that he bought from her master to take care of him. The next day, while he is exploring the town, he comes across a girl named Selin who is attacked by a giant grasshopper. He rescues her, and meeting him helps her break her curse. On the day of his first class, Lloyd was late. Selin and Rio were curious about where he was and eager to see him. The orientations began without his presence, and an offer of a reward was updated to find the lost princess. He was disappointed with the failure of the first exam trial. However, he went for a walk and found a restaurant vacancy. He preferred to look for a part-time job. He was interviewed by the formal head of the royal guard, Chrome Sayaku, who suspected him and thought of him as an enemy. In reality, Lloyd did not have such intentions. Instead, he prepared the instructed interview meal. Colin was curious about where Lloyd was because he seemed to pass the exam due to his unique ancient drawings. This made Colin look for him with the help of Selin and Rio Flavin, as those drawings had power beyond imagination. In the hands of an accomplished caster, someone talented can be aware of them, and there are no limits to such power. That's when they realized that Lloyd might have power beyond their expectations. When they put him to a challenge to fight with Alan, Miss Murray vanished with him, protecting him from those who had the intention of seeing what he was capable of doing. Then she met with Chrome, who followed them and discussed what dangers would come upon the kingdom. As Marie asked him for help in finding out who would bring the dangers, the kingdom's peace was at stake. That's why she was curious about his partner being single-minded. She asked if Colin had ever known starvation. His hometown was struck with famine when he was young. It was hell on earth, and people perished by militants who showed no mercy. In this case, he did not want to have such an experience under his watch. Selin and Rio continued to look for Lloyd, and when Selina suggested seeking direction from the witch, they were welcomed by him, which excited her even more in expressing her feelings to him. Miss Marie arrived and asked why they paid a visit. He introduced them as his schoolmates and asked them about their arrival. They were looking for the missing princess, who happened to be Miss Marie. Then they sat for a discussion of an agreement to share information about the kingdom, Lloyd's power, and his original home. They agreed to help her, but when they left, she had a moment alone on the roof where her master arrived and asked her why her teleporting magic ball was in the well. Marie apologized for not being in her right mind. This time, her master wanted to prepare Lloyd for the festival. Selin and Rio began the investigation in town. Then they arrived at the palace with the princess, where her father, the king, was the demon lord Avatar who attacked his daughter. Marie was free from her father and seeking help. At that moment, Lloyd was concerned about her safety and was on his way to look for her. When he arrived at the castle, he found Selin fighting the demonized soldier. He intervened in the fight, trying to talk sense into the soldier in a conversational manner, but then suddenly changed his approach and accused him of being drunk. Just then, the princess arrived in a rush with the demon lord. He cleansed the demon and made it fade away with a handcloth, upon which he wrote the ancient magic signature. He defeated the demon lord, leaving everyone curious since Princess Marie had told them he was not supposed to get involved. Therefore, all's well that ends well, as the festival was back on track, he recommended. It was a pleasant surprise when he was called by his name by his big brother. He jumped with joy and hugged him tightly, as it had been so long. However, when the chief arrived, his brother disappeared mysteriously. Lloyd, dressed in his soldier outfit, looking impressive to Marie and the chief, recommended that his dream come true. It wasn't quite clear who had gotten him into the academy, and Marie thought to herself, and she was curious to find out before Selin and Rio looked for him. Just then, his friends arrived, and he introduced Alka, the chief of her village, to them. He also introduced them to her. Then Mr. Allen arrived and told everyone how he had helped Lloyd get into the academy. Marie, Lloyd, and Chrome arrived at a certain village of the Holy Sword to obtain an ancient sword. The next day, Colin introduced the students to various types of magic equipment and their requirements. Then the learning session began, and they practiced magic while he surprised everyone with his extreme power. During their break, Selin asked Colin for healing magic lessons since she was a specialist in it. This piqued the interest of everyone, and Alan, who was injured, also wanted to learn healing magic. In her humble home, Marie received 2 visitors who were window shopping. They were looking for a girl they showed her in a picture. During a conversation, they sensed something unusual approaching and Lloyd arrived at the same time. Unexpectedly, they attacked him, but he welcomed them kindly. Murdy didn't like what happened and threw them out of her home. Just as she was contemplating how long she could live with him, the chief arrived to ask her about her visit to the Holy Sword Village. Miss Rio acted differently when she encountered a lady who visited her to threaten her. Lloyd was concerned about her desire to calm her down, so she asked for advice from Marie. Although she had impure thoughts about him, she advised him not to underestimate himself. The next day, he invited her on a date, and she was able to express her troubles to him. They then went to practice for the match, and Rio learned about the reward of the Holy Sword, which was connected to the fate of her artificial arm. During the match, Rio was curious and asked Lloyd where he got the sword. Suddenly, the headmaster of the opposing team arrived to inform them that she would attend the match alone. Rio asked Colin to teach her healing magic. On the day of the match, the soldiers were ready, and the battle followed one-on-one rules, allowing the use of magic and magic items. Any physical attacks such as punching and kicking were forbidden and would result in immediate disqualification. The first match was between Selin and her opponent. This time, her belt did not assist her, and she was at risk when she was attacked with thunder and fire. Suddenly, the belt began to help her fight in the match. She used it as a shield to protect herself from the thunder attacks and started counterattacking with pride. Sadly, she was disqualified due to her belt allowing Thunder Girl to win. Next was Lloyd against the girl who had once broken his ribs when she passed by his home looking for a certain Rio. She initially attacked him with water to disrupt his breathing, but he retaliated with water and won his part in the match. The last contestants were Rito and the headmaster of the other school. They attacked each other using fire. Rio quickly removed the artificial arm hold that the headmaster had given her, thinking it would give her an advantage. However, Rita had trained well, and instead she attacked using the vulnerable arm, defeating her and healing her arm at the same time. Rio emerged victorious, and the headmaster's plan to steal the sword after gaining her consciousness failed because Lloyd was able to protect it. Inside their learning room, Rio finds Lloyd to ask him to go someplace with her. Suddenly, Selin arrives, expressing her love for him just as she always does. Then Allah starts to boast about his arranged marriage to come, which annoys the girls and takes Lloyd away. When he arrives home, he finds his village chief and Marie fighting, as they always do. That's when he informs them about his vacation to work at the instructed hotel. This makes them furious, wondering why their boss couldn't do it himself. However, they ask to go with him, but he denies their request because he wants to try doing things alone. Later, he arrives at the hotel and introduces himself as a part-time worker sent by Mr. Crone from the cafeteria. However, the man who was supposed to welcome him feels threatened, wondering why Crone didn't mention that the boy was a beast. Despite this, he introduces himself to Lloyd. Mr. Crone tells him that he, too, was a soldier and the captain of the Loyal Guards. This greatly admires Lloyd. They then continue their conversation while Mr. Crone shows him around the hotel. After performing well on his tasks, Lloyd is assigned to attend to the earliest client who arrives ahead of time. Luckily, they can have a conversation about natural beauty and take a liking to the boy. As it turns out, the client is there for an investigation, just like Lloyd. In the end, Rio and Selin also become involved. Alan was not feeling well, so Lloyd was assigned to play his part. Covering for him made Selin happy since she had feelings for him. People began to question why Alan's father didn't let him be interviewed as his real son. Despite that, he and the girls start the investigation. While they were planning, Shuma arrived on the spot and he introduced him as his friend from his home village, more like his brother, and also introduced his schoolmate. However, Rio felt uneasy about Shuma, despite Lloyd knowing him. Then Lloyd left the goods with them, but Selin and Lloyd went on a date, leaving Rio to take care of the delivered goods while she investigates what was going on. The girls were able to help Shuma since he was kind to them. Selin recommended that they talk about her curse past at the end of the story. After having a conversation in the boat pretending it was a date to solve the mystery, Selin left for a while. That's when a spy hotel worker, sent by Alan's father, arrived to pretend to deliver a message, suspecting Lloyd of being the demon seed. Then she disappeared into the woods when Selin returned. In the woods, Selin encounters the real demon seed, the secretary to Alan's father. Just as the demon seed was about to attack her, Lloyd arrived, searching for his chief, and involved himself in the fight against the demon seed soldiers. When the demon seed arrived at the hotel, the mystery was solved as everyone realized it was the secretary. The soldiers worked together to fight it, and Lloyd completed the task by crushing the coal and defeating the demon seed. Hatred drove one of the soldiers who had failed at the beginning of the match to seek a transformative strength potion from the priest-like man Shuma. "Fear me, for I am death," he said after being transformed with the potion. Lloyd and his friends were invited to meet the king, who wanted to assign them the task of searching for a giant snake in the dungeon. They were then given instructions about the mission by Colin. Shuma and the priest-like man were up to something that made Alka suspicious of him. However, the soldiers reached the entrance of the dungeon in preparation to enter. Mary met Alka, who magically took her to escort her to the dungeon. When they arrived at an abnormal landing spot, she asked Marie to return while she went her way. As she was about to leave, she stumbled and fell due to tree roots, shocked to see Mikuna, a girl she once knew, trapped in the tree. This made her curious as to why it had happened. Mikuna explained that she was waiting for someone to seek vengeance on and she had been ensnared by the tree. Marie couldn't handle it on her own, but still asked who it was. Shocked to be told it was Lloyd who had stolen her heart's desire, he arrived just in time, and they fought to rescue Marie and his friends. When he emerged victorious, the giant snake appeared at the spot, seeming to recognize him from a young age. The snake introduced himself as the guardian protecting magic seals. Suddenly, the priest-like man arrived with Alka, and he destroyed the snake that was connected to the belt Selena was wearing. The belt then began to speak as Alka had made it using the snake's skin. The king planned to send a legendary warrior to the neighboring kingdom, which irritated Chrome. This time, Lloyd was about to show his friends his home, escorted by Alka using a teleportation door hidden deep in the cave in the woods. The door's professor introduced herself and let them all inside, where they witnessed extraordinary ways of traveling and communicating, such as throwing letters through arrows and stones. They were shocked by the unusual events taking place. Gramps arrived carrying a giant fish that seemed heavy. Philo was very impressed to see him because he was his biggest fan and role model in terms of fighting skills. Interestingly, the whole village trained in the same fighting style. Colin and Chrome wanted to see Melfin, and Alka gave them directions to find him in the fields. They were surprised to see him in his strange outfit, although they liked how traditional it was. Chrome asked when he planned to return, but Melfin honestly told them how much he liked his new life and that he wouldn't go back. Dinner time arrived, and the chief called for a toast to welcome the visitors and celebrate her harmonious relationship with Lloyd, making the other girls jealous. Gramps apologized for her sense of humor and instead toasted his grandson, who had come home as a soldier, and his steadfast friends whom he had brought to their table. Colin recommended Melfin for the tasty food. In the evening, Princess Marie had a conversation with Melfin to gather information about who was involved in her father's case of being controlled by the Demon Lord. They woke up early in the morning to go on a mission to the dungeon. When they reached the place, they were surprised because it looked like a normal mansion, but was called the prison at the end of the world or the last dungeon. Riho thought there could be treasure behind those walls, but Alka warned her that the only thing found inside were demons. The history of that dungeon was not published in textbooks. The professor asked Selena for the belt for the ritual. Though it was hard to say goodbye, she let it go. She also asked about the whereabouts of the sword. Chief Alka felt weak after the ritual, but the others were ready to leave, and Lloyd went to say goodbye to the villagers. While the professor and Alka went to the woods to have a word, sadly, it was an ambush to leave him alone and trap the belt and her. He returned to the teleporting door without Alka and pretended she was supposed to arrive before her. When he arrived, his friends were already gone, and the professor asked him to go look for the chief since she was weak. However, it was her evil plan to leave without them to go get the holy sword with the aim of opening it for demons, as the professor's plan was intact. When they reached the town, they went their separate ways as Rio suspected Eve to be up to something. In that case, she investigated by herself. As Rio, Alan, and Selena were in conversation, the strange man who fought with Alka in the dungeon where they searched for the snake arrived with Lloyd's brother, which surprised them, especially Rio. She quickly warned the king that Crone recommended that they be trusted. He was able to find the chief and rescue her to go and stop the evil, and Alka cooked up a plan. Alka instructed him that when he got to the site of the ambush, he should follow the instructions she gave him in the letter. The next day, the contest between the two nations was set, and the king was open to it. Alan fought against Mikuna, and as he was losing, the king asked the visitor the meaning of the fight. At first, he was afraid to be honest with the king, but he claimed to consider the proposal as an alliance between able lands with the express purpose of ruling the world. As the king observed, they possessed the technology by which human beings could be made both powerful and marvelously obedient, effectively trained masters. When Chrome and Mean were about to stop the king from listening to him, they were silenced by Shuma's magic to prevent interruption. Though the offer was tempting, the king declined it. Then the war began, and everyone was prepared as well. The girls challenged the professor, and Shuma fought with Melfin, while the people fought with the creatures. Surprisingly, Alan tried to attack the priest-like man, but he was not human. He was formed by magic as a beacon of hope for humanity. At the same time, Lloyd arrived furiously at what the professor had done to the village. Then he summoned his giant to fight with him. They fought, but it kept on reviving and beating him, making him consider giving up. Melfin reminded him of his dream and not to give up. He realized that his dream was to protect the defenseless. Finally, with his team, they defeated their enemies.